All right, it's 5:30, so we're going to go ahead and start our next meeting. And we have, I'm going to call the meeting to order, the September 14th, 2021 meeting of the Escambia Children's Trust Board to order. We appreciate all of your interest, the people that are here and people that are watching, and the children of Escambia County. Welcome your input. If you'd like to speak, there are some forms in the back turnstile. You may fill those out and hand them to one of the women up front, the front table, and we will let you speak to either an agenda item or at the end of a public forum. And each speaker will be allotted 3 minutes. We have everyone present today except for one of our board members, and so we have a quorum. There's 9 of 10 of us here. And at this time, we'll move to the adoption of the agenda that was previously sent out. State statutes require that changes made to the agenda after publications be based on a finding of good cause determined by the person designated to preside over the meeting and stated in the record. We would like to add 2 requests for solicitations to discuss on the agenda. Under item number 6, we would like to add also an insurance solicitation and the risk management firm and accounting service. Yes, the insurance and risk management firm, solicitation, and the accounting services solicitation in addition to the banking services. Is there a motion to add these 2 requests to the agenda?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, all in favor of the amendment to add the 2 solicitations to the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, next we will go to approval of the minutes from August 10th, 2021.
So move.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so the minutes pass. And thank you to Emily for doing those for us.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I did want to recognize Claire Long, who's our Human Services Director, that really behind the scenes has really worked on children's issue through our social services and our human services program. And so we're glad that she's here.
Great, thank you so much for coming tonight. And I know you've been before to our meeting, so thank you for coming. And at this time, we'll have a report from Ms. Appleyard.
On the Escambia Children's Trust website, that's escambiachildrenstrust.org, there's a place to sign up for a newsletter. We've been collecting emails when people ask us about something. There's also some left over from the campaign to vote yes for children, which is kind of how this group launched. That is the place that, well, the website is where we post the solicitations and these proposals. We will send out an email to a newsletter to that mailing list probably Thursday morning to give anybody a chance to sign up for that. But again, the solicitations will be on there. We have in the past for our other solicitations, we've paid for advertising. For legal, it was pretty easy because there's an association of attorneys for Escambia and Santa Rosa. It's gotten progressively harder to find the right system to use. Banking, for instance, there's not an association of qualified public depositories, which is what is required to handle our funds. So once we release the proposals, the board, I believe, is not supposed to talk to people about it. So we'll give you some time to, if you have a favorite, but anyway, encourage people to sign up for the newsletter. All that will be in at this time is the request for proposal information. I've been attending some webinars on data collection. Each of the councils seems to do it differently. Hillsborough has a full-time computer programmer on staff. He is wonderful and amazing. SAMUS is another data collection by the Florida Children's Council. I have not explored that one because they are coming out with a new version in October.
Could you repeat the name of that again?
SAMUS, S-A-M-I-S. Tomorrow, I will be participating, and anybody who would like to, in a webinar on the new federal funding that's coming through the American Rescue Plan Act. It is about supporting our out-of-school time. It's about federal resources for after-school programs. It's strictly informational, but if you have time and would be interested in just listening in, I'd be glad to send it on to you.
Would you please?
Could you send?
Oh,
I would
glad to.
like that as well.
And I will say, I try to balance how much information I send to you. I get invitations all the time for all kinds of things to watch or listen to. You know,
No, thank you, please send it. I mean,
Okay, but
after
there-
school, I know Clara and our team would love to be a
okay,
part of
good.
that.
Then there's some things that you must look at, like the agenda and supporting. So I don't really know the best way to say, this one you need to have, and this one is good background. But, and I'm sorry to send it to you on a Saturday morning, but sometimes that's when it gets there. We're doing the best we can.
What time is
So,
it tomorrow?
I think it's at 1.
Well, please send,
Okay,
please send it.
I can do that right now. Okay.
Ms.
that-
Karen, we
Carolyn,
should be
I
on
would like to be added as well.
Okay, I'll send it to everybody, and you can register. Another one that I'm going to send you is the Strive Together Cradle to Career Network. It's a week long in San Francisco, but because it's virtual this year, they are going to just pay for anybody who wants to register and attend. It's several days and several, anyway, we might pick up something if you'd like to do that. So those things I'll be sending, they're not critical, but they're good background. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Appleyard. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Appleyard, I've gotten a couple of questions about the website. Like, you can't find it if you Google Escambia Children's Trust. Is that, and I have looked, and sure enough, I mean, if you get the P&J articles, you get Facebook, you get Instagram, you get articles
Okay.
from like your.
We don't have any paid search engine optimization right now. If you would like us to add that, we can do that. It would cost something. I don't know how much. Would you like me to explore that?
I would make a motion to explore it. Only, I mean, it's better than all of us fielding questions about why can't I find it?
Judge, only way I can find it is I have to go to the Facebook page, and it's on the Facebook page, but I had the same issue. I couldn't find it either.
Sure.
The Facebook page comes
Well,
up.
and I have it, it's just members of the public.
Right.
can't find it.
And at this point, we are not active on the Facebook page. We're going to let your paid staff handle the Facebook.
You can find it if you put it in like it is for our email listing. Just put escambiachildrenstrust.org, all is one word, and it pops up what exists of it.
I certainly send it when people are texting me. I just, for those people who don't have my personal.
I'll get a proposal for that. Okay.
So Ms. Appleyard is going to get a proposal for how much it would cost to do SEO. So next, we have a report from our Personnel Committee, who we met on September the 8th. We'll let Mr. Peden go.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The Personnel Committee met last week and evaluated two different companies, Landrum HR and Government HR, for the choice to be the executive search firm for our executive director. The Personnel Committee voted to hire Landrum HR, who will do a comprehensive search over a 12-week period to find the best candidate for the trust. And moving forward, before we can move forward with Landrum, we need to have the board vote on this tonight.
Mr. Peden,
Yes, sir.
two things. How wide is the search? Is it in the southeast, or is it a national search? How wide will the search be?
It's a national search.
It's a national search. Were there minutes from this meeting?
Yes.
Are they in this backup?
I saw a preview of the minutes. I don't know if they've been posted.
Yeah, I don't have any.
But we also it needs to be, we also recorded it, and I've checked every single day to see if it's on myscambia.com to find the recording of the agenda, of the meeting, and that has not been posted by the county yet. So we need to talk to, I guess maybe David in the back to see when that's going to be posted.
So I would want the minutes added to the official records. I was not at the meeting, nor have I listened to it, but unfortunately, I believe that there were statements that were incorrect, that were stated, and for the record, I want them remedied and for the official records. And quite frankly, I'll say exactly what they are. and Tori, I'll address them to you. There's no conflict of interest with Clark Park and Hart with me. I don't know where that would be assumed or substantiated at. And so, for the record, I would want that to be stricken from the records, or at least corrected in the records, that I've not had a conflict of interest, nor do I have any relationship that would prohibit me from voting from them. And as moving forward, I serve on 13 boards, as many of us do, and there will be organizations that I'm a part of that will probably be coming forward to seek support from this board. And at all times, I will lean to council to file a disclaimer in terms of any organization that I'm a part of.
And Lumen, I just wanted to clarify, if that is what was stated, that's not what I meant. I used it as an example that someone came to me with a request because they had a question, and I was able to justify why I agreed on that selection, because they had a question about what was said before I got to the meeting last week, and I could clarify exactly why I did what I did based on the information that was given, even though I wasn't there. So that's why that statement was made. It wasn't, if it sounded or came off as if I was assuming that there was a conflict of interest, that comment came up because I missed a part of the meeting, and when the person asked me, I wasn't at the meeting, but I was able to justify my decision based on the information I was given.
Oh, and it's
Yeah.
no problem.
And
Listen,
and I can talk to you outside
no,
of
you
here.
can't talk. Listen,
So-
I deal every day with conspiracy theories.
Yeah.
And so, but full disclosure, if there's something that was said in public, I will address it in public. If it's said in private, I'll address it in private.
I agree.
But, words matter.
Yes.
Words hurt. And, I'm in a cartoon every other day in the paper, so it doesn't matter to me. But the reality of it is, I will accept responsibility for anything, mistake that I make. But I just, for the, my friends who are at Clark Park and who are my friends, who called me and asked for me to at least publicly acknowledge that there are no relationships other than,
And the comment I made, I asked for a conflict of interest because we had talked about it before, and that example was an example that I had said, saying that I was on the executive committee and I didn't know who knew, and when it was brought to my attention that something was said before I got there, I was able to address the two packets that I had, and based on the information I was received, that candidate still was the best candidate. In addition to anything else, I still would have made the same choice. So I just wanted to let you know.
oh, no, it has nothing to do with nothing to do with your selection. I probably would have supported you on your selection. I mean, I'll say this since we're having this conversation. I never believe in 2 solicitations. I believe that it should be at least 3. And so that would have been my position. And I stated that to the executive director. And the 2 didn't have anything to do with each other than my name was brought up in the personnel committee that I was not there. I
Yes.
love to defend myself if I'm not there.
Of course.
And so I just wanted to have
Yeah.
a point
Right,
of
we're gonna-
clarification for the minutes, because 6 months from now, 12 months from now, those minutes will reflect what was said. And if I don't get a point of clarification, then someone will only assume that that's valid. And so I just wanted for the record,
Of course.
Madam Attorney, that all be cleared up in the minutes.
So let's just make sure that's not what he said tonight was in the minutes. Thank you, Emily. All right. So as this is a recommendation to hire Landrum from a committee, does not need a second. And I would like to open up this recommendation for discussion.
I am a part of that committee, and like I stated before, I don't feel like a due diligence was brought up when Pastor Wesley made his recommendation. I don't feel like the committee did their due diligence to review both candidates. The decision is what the recommendation is, but I also want to put it on record that I'm not comfortable with the decision, and I don't think that the issues or concerns that Pastor Wesley had before were addressed in a manner that was, that I could stand by.
Thank you. Any more comments?
Well, I would just, again,
You speak into the mic.
I got the phone. If we could just, I certainly appreciate, I could have been at the meeting, and I'm not on the personnel committee, but for those who are tuning in that don't know what anybody's talking about, can we briefly summarize Pastor Wesley's concerns?
Mr. Pedem, would you like to, since you're personnel chair?
If Tori's got concerns, she can talk about them. I think our committee spent a lot of time on this. We went 2 meetings on this. The first meeting, we evaluated both companies. The second meeting was to interview both companies. I think a lot of time has been spent. I think due diligence has been done. Pastor Wesley's last comments before he left after we voted, he said, I could work with Landrum. I think they're good people. And I'm glad we had this conversation today. He said it was a tough conversation, but he didn't want to be on the board with a bunch of yes people, and that that hard decisions and hard conversations are going to be made, and he was okay with it.
I just, I guess I don't feel comfortable voting on something that we don't have the minutes to read through and see how the committee made a decision. I understand a committee report, but there's no context to put that committee report in because there's no minutes provided. So I would ask that we defer the decision until we can actually get a copy of the minutes and get to read through them and feel better. I am also concerned that there are only 2 applicants. I don't know if the committee discussed why we only got 2 responses, but I think that would be something in a typical procurement you would want to examine. Did we do enough solicitation to generate the amount of interest that we think should have been generated? 2 respondents is competitive, but it's certainly not as competitive as 3 or 4.
I'll let Ms. Appleyard talk about
Okay,
the
well,
solicitation.
about we did pay for advertising at places we could find that would be appropriate after consulting with the county offices, other places like that. We had at least 4 companies respond to say, thank you, but we can't do this right now. So it's a big job. They get paid, in general, a percentage of the salary. So what we're looking for is not healthcare consulting or anything like that. It is, anyway, and there's not one place to go for that, so we did a variety. And once we chose to go with a search firm, we were limited in search firms. If they don't want to apply, you can't make them. And we were not in a position to ask them to apply once we got responses. That's part of that cone of silence. That's my understanding for it.
When we voted on our law firm, did we have minutes for that meeting as well? Were minutes passed out before we accepted Clark Pardine and Hart as the law firm?
I can't tell you that for sure.
I don't recall.
I don't think we did.
Madam Chair, one thing I want to be sure, putting on my almost parliamentarian hat, minutes only reflect action taken. They're not required to reflect conversation. We don't do, what's the word I want, verbatim minutes. And so in order to have that kind of information, it wouldn't necessarily be in the minutes if there was some discussion. That would be more in a video rather than the minutes. I was a secretary for a large organization, so I've tried to help Emily understand that she doesn't have to write down everything we say unless, as directed by this board, they want to have those kind of things reflected in the minutes, but that's a very difficult task. I was late to the meeting, so I missed most of the interview, but I had read through the papers that projects that they had sent to us, and I think each of us had that opportunity. So I think if there's some concerns, and we expressed some at the table, I think I said that neither one of these were perfect. There were things that I would have liked to have seen in a broader stroke. In fact, if we do go with Landrum, I don't know when it's appropriate to say, but I want to make sure that they're going to reach out to some of the organizations that are listed in the other proposal to make sure that we're getting a good mix of applications. But you know, I think that there were 6 of us at the Personnel Committee meeting. And so I think that that's where, you know, we need to be, because the longer we put this off, I'm just going to say this, thank you to Ms. Appleyard, but the longer we put this off, the longer it's going to take us to find the right person to be able to do this job. And if they bring us back a list, having gone through this, and getting this amazing man sitting here, but having gone through this search process, if we don't like any of the people that they send us, we don't have to take any of those people. We can say, go back and look again. So I think that's what's keeping me going, is the fact that if we don't get the right mixture, we can say, we need you to look harder, or we need to help look for it. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
No, like I said before, the personnel committee did make a recommendation. I just am not comfortable with that recommendation, and being on that committee, I felt it was my due diligence to say that I'm uncomfortable with the recommendation.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor and a second, and then, so we need to vote on that motion before we try to vote on what Mr. Sachs.
What's the motion?
The motion is to employ Landrum as our search firm, and we have a second on that because it came from a committee. And then Mr. Sachs said he would like to table it, so I'm not sure, parliamentarian, where we.
If Mr. Sachs offers a substitute motion, I certainly would
Okay.
support it.
Our parliamentarian can correct me, but a motion to table takes precedent, does it not? Isn't it a?
So we have the motion to table until next month. And
You have a second?
is there a second on that?
Second.
All in favor? Any discussion on that? Okay, all in favor, say aye, and raise your hand, so we know who's saying aye. Lumen, Tory, and Mr. Sachs. All opposed? So the motion to table fails, and so we go back to the original motion, which was to employ Landrum as our executive search firm. And there was already a second on that, so any more discussion on that?
Madam Chair, Tory, Mr. Sachs, is there anything that you want to include that brings concern that we should indicate to Landrum? I mean, I was not at the personnel meeting. I too want to move it forward.
I know that.
If this is time sensitive, but
Yeah.
what are the?
I guess one of the negotiating issues for me is, in addition to Landrum's guarantee was only 90 days and the other agencies was 1 year. So I'm sure, I guess that's a negotiable. I don't know if that's something that we can negotiate. The leadership and the diversity and inclusion was something that Pastor Wesley, which is the reason we wanted to interview them, and that was something that I addressed when I looked at my due diligence and going to the websites and questioning each person about what their diversity and inclusion included and how they as a company address that outside of before this conversation or before we address them. And that was something that, again, before in our first meeting, Pastor Wesley had brought up, which made me go to the websites and review some things to educate myself on both candidates before we met with them on that day. And that was an issue for me as well.
And Madam Chair, I actually didn't even vote on the amended motion, so I didn't say yeah or raise my hand. My only point in seconding the motion that was made is simply that the search firm will have to work with each of us, all 10 of us. And when you have a contentious vote and not a unanimous vote, without a clear mission, it makes it very difficult for a search firm to bring the right candidates, and it makes it more contentious down the road. So I really was just trying to build consensus.
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out, too. Mr. Smith, Dr. Smith, sorry.
Ms. Woods, I'd like to just ask a clarifying question. With the other group, did you find a difference in the diversity and inclusion?
Yes, they have a full page designated to the work that they've done in the community. Very in-depth, very strategic, actually very impressive. And the reason that it was brought to my attention was Pastor Wesley had mentioned that Landrum's description for their D&I was very small. It was like a paragraph, very generic. So, and then when we met with them on that day and we interviewed them, the person that spoke for the agency, the other agency, actually had a presentation to talk about what they were doing. And like I said, even in addition to that, the website lays all that out. And one of my biggest, I guess, part of being on this committee is to make sure that all children are taken care of. And I believe that when I shouldn't have to ask you about it, what you do before I ask you about it is important to me. And when I went through their website and looked at the diversity in their leadership, again, if you look up what diversity is in leadership, it comes from the top. And being at a Fortune 40 company, my company does that diligently. They go above and beyond to make sure that they hire diverse people in their leadership, because your leadership trickles down to the rest of your company. And to me, again, that's an important factor when we're looking at someone that's going to hire somebody to take care of Escambia County for years past when I'm not here. And being from Pensacola and leaving Pensacola for that reason, that is very, very important to me. So I hope that answers your question.
Madam Chair? Yes. Well, two things. One, I've been trying to find whether or not we had the minutes for the law firm. I can't find the answer to that. That's what I've been doing in our email. My second question is, I think that you started the conversation with, this has been approved and does not need a vote, but you wanted a vote.
It does not need a second,
It does not need a second, I see, okay, all right, I'm sorry.
It does not need a
I didn't know if
second?
we were
Why
having
is
an
that,
academic
Meredith?
conversation.
because it came from a committee. And if it comes
So
from a
whenever there's a
committee,
recommendation from a committee, it doesn't need a second.
Doesn't need a
Right.
second, I'm with you.
I'm not a wordsmith on parliamentary procedure, that's good. And so for the record, I do agree with Mr. Sapp. I mean, as we move forward in procurement, that, I'll be supportive of this, but in every instance, to even eliminate the potential perception that we should have more than 2 bids, in my opinion. And so I do agree with him, and if it's time sensitive and we have to sole source, I'm very open to that. But when it's not time sensitive, that doesn't endanger the operations of an organization, I just believe that you should always have more than 2 bids as a practice. But Tori, I think that, I appreciate your efforts and position on diversity and inclusion, which I believe that it's important. I've said that since the inception of this tax, because the collateral material, we all know the faces of the children on it were black and brown children that they put forth. And those are the children within the inner city and the urban core that need the help the most. And so they utilize those pictures to get this tax passed. And so there should be reciprocity in that. So I'm going to certainly always support diversity and inclusion, whether it's popular or unpopular. But I think we have the position and power to say exactly to this search firm what you can bring back. And if we encourage that they bring back a diverse group of applicants, male, female, minorities, African Americans, Asians, Hispanic, white, I think that we can give that recommendation and say that we expect, not only we expect, we demand that you bring back a diverse pool of applicants. And I think that that would satisfy where you're going. That we want qualified, we're not going to say unqualified, but we do want a diverse pool of applicants. And if you don't get that, then don't bring it back until you get that. And if they say they can't find them, then go find them. That's the reality of it for me.
And Commissioner May, thank you for sharing that, because I think this is an important topic. I think there's been good points raised here, and I know from my perspective, we have an achievement gap, and our job is to reach all kids, and so I think this is a very, very important issue. And I appreciate what you shared, because however we proceed, I think that needs to be an important priority.
No, thank you, Mr. Superintendent.
all right, any more comments on the executive search firm? right.
Lynn, one of the, if I may, Madam Chair, one of the deciding factors for me individually, and one of the key points I think that was brought up and discussed, is that with our recommended vendor, there appeared to be, through their stepwise process that was provided to us, there was involvement of this committee on literally every step of the process they outlined. And so I think your concerns, and hopefully Tori, yours as well, for this committee able to provide feedback regardless of who that firm was, at least from my comfort level as I looked at that, was provided best by them. As I say, it went through in every step. They said, here's our timeline, was the way they sold it. But literally it was more of a process map than a timeline. And on essentially every single step, they're involving and including this committee.
Yeah, like, I don't know the website. I was not in the meeting for your discussion, but I know my dear friend of 20 years, Ted Kirscher, helped set the culture at Landrum. So I know that commitment to diversity and inclusion. And I know the Landrum family as well.
All right, so all in favor of employing Landrum as a search director, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, then the motion passes that we will employ Landrum as a search firm. So thank you so much for all your hard work, Mr. Peden, and for all the Personnel Committee members. Now we'll have a report from our Bylaws Committee. Ms. Hightower?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We met immediately following the Personnel Committee meeting on September 8th. It was a recommendation from our committee that we turn over the opportunity to create the policies and procedures to our legal team. All of us had read the ones that were from many of the trusts and realized that somebody with legal experience would be better to undertake that task. Ms. Crawford is very well versed in that particular aspect of the job, having worked for the county. And she has agreed to bring that back to the committee for us to review. And then we're hoping that by the November meeting, we will have policies to bring to the committee for your consideration.
Thank you. And those policies include the procurement policies as well. So hopefully that will help us address some of these questions in the future about vendors.
Yeah, I don't know that we want to have that have her include that we must have more than two or not, that Commissioner May left, but we can look at that.
We can review them when she brings them back to us.
Well, it would be helpful to have some direction on these because we are going to be releasing these
That's true.
solicitations soon. So if we need to have at least 3 qualified, we need to know, that would help to know that.
And would it have counted toward the number, good, he's back. Would it have counted toward the number since you said you had others that responded but said they didn't have time? So we really had 6 respondents?
At least, yeah, I'd
Okay.
have to go back and count, but I
So I
found
guess
easily 4.
that's the
So
difference,
does
you
that
know.
count or not? That's a good point.
Do we have to have, Commissioner Ray, we're talking about with the policies, Ms. Crawford is going to do that for us, and we're talking about the procurement piece where you said you would like to see us consider more than 2. So my question is, do we want to put that in the procurement policy language? And then my second question is, do you mean when you, that we have to have 2 proposals, more than 2 proposals for the committee or the group to consider? Because as she said, she had multiple groups respond, but only 2 actually finished the process.
I mean, I'm always Patty, a lock is for honest person, a thief is going to break in regardless. And so, I mean, the ideology or where I come from is simply my position that I would prefer. I don't care if you make it a policy or not. So, I mean, yeah, I'm good with it. But I just think in general practices that we do at the county that we try to have more than 2 proposals. We try to have 3. And if we can't achieve that, and the reason I wouldn't push to put it in the ordinance because, we trust our executive directors and if they have to sole source it, I would not want to tie their hands that we have an emergency during a disaster and they have to sole source it. And it's in the ordinance that we have a meeting and change that ordinance. But I would think, just in the spirit of the board, that we will encourage that we get at least 3 and not necessarily make it a bylaw or an ordinance.
I would echo those concerns of getting into a must required versus the intent are two different things, and I could see this coming to a screeching halt with any number of things if we said we must do such and such.
I agree with Dr. Dr. Patty.
I think that as people become used to going to our website and looking for opportunities to be involved with us, I think we will have more response. I think just right now, people don't know, and we're having to struggle with how do we get the word out so that people can, yeah. So.
All right, thank you so much, Ms. Hightower. All right, we're going to move forward. We have the request for solicitation for banking that was sent out. When we also amended the agenda so for the solicitation for accounting services and solicitation for insurance and risk management services. So I'm going to take each one individually. For banking, we, as you all know, that we have a line of credit with the county. We cannot get access to that money until we have a bank. So we would need to have a bank. And so right now, this was sent out for you to review. Our goal, our hope is to be able to post it tomorrow and issue it tomorrow, and then have responses due on October the 1st at 5 p.m. They're going to be posted online on October the 4th, and then the Budget Committee, which consists of pretty much eight of us on this committee, I believe, will meet on October the 6th at 10 a.m. at the school district office, and then we'll present at the full board for the selection on October the 12th.
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Yes, ma'am, you may ask any.
Thank you. Okay, so I think I need clarification based on comments that were made after the fact. Ms. Appleyard, were the other search firms that contacted you saying we don't have time to take on this kind of project, or the time in which to apply is too short?
To take on the project.
Okay, all right, because then I was going to say, I mean, this is a very quick turnaround too, and I don't know if this.
I think most RFPs or requests for solicitation are about 2 weeks, correct? No, they're longer.
It really just depends. I mean, there's no set time frame unless there's one in your procurement policy, but it can be 2 weeks up to a month. I mean, it would just, I think we just went with the 2 weeks based on your calendar of upcoming meetings.
The World Trade Organization published some rules several years back that encouraged large solicitations to be over 40 days. And it was about the World Wide Web and trying to involve as many people internationally as you could in solicitations. And obviously, when you have a procurement that is critically necessary, the 10 to 14-day window is probably the most common one used, but it does limit organizations that can be responsive. And just an example, like last week, the entire Department of Children and Families was at a performance summit in Orlando. So if that organization was going to have to respond to something and then only had a week to do it because your time frame is 10 days, it would be very limiting. So unless it's a crisis, that 10 to 14-day window is not something that would be supported. It would be more like a 3 or 4 week window. So it is something to consider about routine procurements, whether you want to lengthen that time period.
We can, is there a motion to?
Would it be a problem,
back?
Ms. Abbott, would it be a problem just to, with what he said, to just put it out for 30 days and just, well, I mean, would that hurt us?
Is that a motion?
When does our money start coming to us?
We can get the money
starts in
whenever.
November.
But we also have a line of credit that we
Right, but
can
the
be
credit,
using
the
right
line of
now
credit is no good. They will not pay our bills.
until we have a bank.
Until we have a bank. So,
So it's like, is it all an emergency after all?
right now you have an ad agency with a line of credit right now, but we don't really have that in writing. And we have a law firm that probably is expecting to be paid at some point too.
Oh, no, they bill on 60 days.
Right. And
Is there,
yes,
You got 3 weeks.
can we
How about
wait?
3 weeks?
we can make it 3, let's just change, then, is that a motion?
That's a motion for 3
Okay,
weeks.
so September 15th,
Second.
okay. Any more, well, let's put these dates in the calendar, let's figure out what
Carolyn, you
3
have
weeks
something?
are.
If you look, our next meeting is October 12th. The day before that is Columbus Day. I don't know how big that is, but
Love Columbus.
our next meeting is the 12th.
So it's
Just
3 weeks, what
FYI.
day is 3 weeks from now? I mean, or tomorrow, 3 weeks from tomorrow, I guess.
You know, if you want to
October the
close it,
5th.
if closing it on the 12th and that group,
Close it on the 12th.
if Dr. Smith can meet that day, I'd have to check with Dana if he can be here. But that might be an option.
I don't think that we would have time to close it on the 12th and.
Oh, no, it
to have
would
it-
have to
3 weeks
close
would be,
the Friday
3 weeks
before.
from tomorrow is the 6th.
Right.
If we want to vote on this and bring it to the full board for vote approval, who our bank will be at the next meeting, October the 12th, we would have to close it on the 6th and then meet on the 8th and then be able to review all the banks. And I imagine we will have more than 2 banks apply. And maybe more than 2 insurance companies. It might be a lot to do in 2 days. So we may have to, that's what I'm trying to say. So we may have to push this back into the November to decide to vote on the full, on November, if that's.
Madam Chair, you could
everybody.
also call a special meeting.
Oh, we could do that. Thank you, Walter. You should be sitting here. You have all the right ideas. Okay. So where are we motion-wise? But we motioned to 3 weeks.
I mean, you extend 3 weeks. I mean,
Okay.
if you can't get it in, I mean,
All right, so we're going to motion to close on October 6th. There was a second.
what's the criteria we're looking for, Madam Chair?
It's in here
Oh.
that was sent out to
Pages.
you. The banks have it all. One of the insurances has been updated to include board insurance and, just trying to.
Can
they're all
credit unions
similar.
apply for this, Ms. Appleyard?
No, they cannot. And I do have a list from the state of the qualified public depositories in Escambia County. I just wanted to limit it to Escambia. I've not done anything with the list.
How many is on that list, Ms.
There look to
Appleyard?
be 16, 17,
Wow.
17.
Yep, I'm good.
I have not done anything with that list in terms of trying to find contacts for each of them. If you would like me to, we're going to need another day or two, but we can do that. We'll do that.
So the motion was to allow for 3 weeks, so to close on October the 6th. Is that correct?
Correct.
All right, so any more discussion on that? All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that passes, that we're now going to change it to responses due October the 6th at 5 PM. And then we will vote at the full ECT board meeting for selection at our November meeting, which would be November the 9th, or we'll call a special meeting. Is there a motion?
We could, just as a suggestion, Madam Chair, that we could perhaps consider either calling a special meeting or doing it at the November meeting. When we meet again as a board on the 12th, we'll at least have an idea of how many respondents we had, how much material do we have to, I mean, if only 2 banks respond, I doubt that's going to be the case, but if it does, then we could perhaps meet and vote on that much quicker than if all 17 of them respond.
Perfect.
Madam Chair, are we just going to let staff rank them and make recommendations, or will your committee?
The
get in?
committee would do
The
it.
committee, okay.
Our staff.
I mean, I'm good with staff doing it.
Ms. Appleyard.
Yeah, the sole sorcerer. But the only reason I said if Carolyn had it ready on the 12th, I mean, I'm ready to raise my hand. I mean, based on her recommendation.
I don't know if she wants that much pressure to recommend the bank, do you?
Will we have a rubric?
Yes, ma'am. The rubric is
Okay.
already actually in
Should
here.
be in
It's
there.
on
Yeah,
page.
well, that's what I was
Yes.
just making sure everyone knew that. Because when you stated that 8 out of the 10 of us are already on the committee, is it inappropriate for us to do it at the meeting itself, to do the?
Yeah, if 8 people vote for it, I mean, it's not going to lose in a meeting.
I mean, if we have 16 people apply for a bank, to be the bank, I don't know how long that would take if we all, I just don't want to waste people's time. Like, if you're not signed up for the budget committee, you don't want to sit here for 2 hours to discuss this. And so that's my, so I think the Dr. Northrop's idea of bringing it to the board on October the 12th, if we have 2, then we can, decide what we want to do. If we have 15, we can just make a meeting and then have a special meeting, or wait till November the 9th or 10th, whatever day it is. So do I need a motion on all that?
I thought you already made a motion.
Yeah, we did a motion to stop on the 6th.
If I can ask a question, Ms. Appleyard, what are, I know November is coming quickly. Is it highly problematic if we're not functioning by, because if it's awarded to a particular agency, organization in the second week of November, it's going to take them a little time, I'm sure, to get things set up. So if we're not functioning till December 1st, let's say, is that a problem?
I would imagine the county would be glad to hold on to that money for us, which is what
Okay.
would happen.
Okay.
I assume, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, we'll be
that-
good stewards of it. I mean, it won't go
Yeah,
anywhere.
don't
Yeah.
touch our money.
We-
Yes. But I can confirm that with the clerk's office, that they would hold it until we have the appropriate banking set up.
The
But-
flip
but I
side
guess-
of that would be the debts that we have already amassed to our legal aid.
Right, that's what I
Yourself
was
and
gonna
others.
ask about.
Are they going to be, I know the county hanging on to the money, that's not an issue. It's the people that we've already.
Obligated
endured some
ourselves.
I could tell you,
obligations.
since I have this conflict of interest with Clark Parton, I'm sure that they would be great. They wouldn't have a problem.
Well,
We'll just be in a,
And I wouldn't
Yeah.
put Meredith on the spot. I would just only put that on Mr.
Okay,
Remington.
all right, so we're going to move forward. We have that was a request for solicitation of banking services. The next one is for insurance and risk management services. And we can do the same thing for 3 weeks, October the 6th. I do want to point out that on, Meredith did update on page 4 to include insurance for public officials liability and director and officers liability. And that is not, she updated that this afternoon.
Did you need a motion to amend
I do
that
need
to
a
3
motion.
weeks?
Would you like to motion that?
I will be happy to amend it to 3 weeks.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion of moving this to October the 6th, responses due? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
All right, so we're going to have that one, insurance and risk management, open tomorrow, and then responses due October the 6th. The next one is the solicitation of accounting services, and we would also need a motion to issue it tomorrow, and responses due October the 6th as well.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Is there
second,
any discussion? All right, so that one, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that one passes as well to issue that one tomorrow. Now, we're moving on, real quick, before we move on to Mr. Kircher, will you talk about cone of silence real quick? Because these are all going out tomorrow, so will you just give us a brief update so we don't do anything improper?
Sure. Very briefly, so the cone of silence is a time period after the solicitation has been issued and until the actual award is made, during which no entity should contact any member of this board on behalf of someone interested in applying or having applied to, gain favoritism or really for any purpose. So it's a true blackout period, a cone of silence. It is explained in the solicitation. There is a section in the materials that provides the ethics of the solicitation and also defines that time period. If anyone contacts you, I would just direct them to Ms. Appleyard.
Thank you. So now we're moving on to Mr. Kircher. We had a great planning session with him back in August. We worked on mission and vision. So now we're going to follow up and see where we are. Let's turn it over to you.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think we did have a great session. We were together last month at Woodland Heights. I think my sense of it was when we ended the session, you all felt like you were probably closer together in terms of a vision for where you wanted to go than you might have thought before we started. So I applaud you for the work that you did, your participation. You were very engaged in that session. And so tonight we're going to just kind of look at some of what we did. My suggestion to you is that you treat this work going forward sort of in a draft phase. I'll give you some questions to think about, particularly as you think about core purpose and core values, to just see how this fits with you. Does it feel authentic to you? Is this who you are as a group and who you want to be going forward as a council? So with that, we had a core purpose statement that reads, working together to make our children's lives better. Working together to make our children's lives better. The comments that you all sent back, Carolyn sent those out to you and asked for some feedback from you. It was overwhelmingly positive. You all felt like that did reflect who you are. So my questions for you to think about, and as I said, I think you should treat this as a draft, accept this, and just see, does it inspire you? Working together to make our children's lives better, does that inspire you? There's a really important question here, which is, does it help you decide what not to do? Does working together to make our children's lives better help you make decisions about things? You're going to get lots of things to do, and so what might be some things that you should not do that don't fit that core purpose statement? And then finally, does it make you proud? When you think about the work of the Children's Trust, does working together to make our children's lives better, does that really state who you are? Is it authentic? Does it make you proud? Does it really fit who you are? So, my suggestion, I'll send these questions to you, to Carolyn, so she can get them out to you so you can think about it. But I'd be happy to respond to any questions or thoughts you all have at this point about your draft core purpose statement. Remember, it had to state your reason to exist. It had to be succinct. It had to pass the TED test. Could I remember that statement? Those are some of the things we talked about as sort of the test of a core purpose statement. So,
Mr. Kircher, if I may, Madam Chair, I know that you keep deferring it to us, but we are looking to you. Do you think it's specific enough?
yes.
Okay.
I do. I mean, I think it's something that as proposals begin to come forward to you all, then I think you can look back at that statement and does it really fit those elements? Does it, are you working together with other elements in the community to make those things happen? What's the impact it's having on children's lives? So yes, I think it can help you make decisions, which is really what this is all about.
It's one of the things I continue to have kind of a bit of a hang-up on, is we are the Escambia Children's Trust to benefit the children of Escambia County, being paid for and supported by taxpayers of Escambia County. And I just think it may be to John Q. Public out there to see some reflection of our children. Where's our children, the kids over in Gulf Breeze, or our children, the kids wherever, and somewhere within that to say perhaps throughout Escambia County, give some reflection on the fact that we are looking at and attempting to address the needs of those children here within this community.
What I would caution you about that, Dr. Northrup, is this is only one piece of the element that's going to go into your core ideology. And so when you get to your vision statement, that's probably the appropriate place to put that sort of sentiment in there. So it's when you get to the vivid description piece of this, that gives you more room to expand, what it is that you're trying to get across, so that hopefully John Q. Public is going to read your core purpose statement, read your core value statement, and then read some kind of vision piece. And I think in that vision piece is where you hone in on the work here in Escambia County. That would be my recommendation to you. So as I said, just think of this, it's part of a context, it's part of a whole, and there are a lot of other elements that will come into this as we work through this.
I think it's pretty unique too that the first three letters in Escambia are ESC, Excellent Services for Children. So we could do something with Escambia Children's Trust and kind of expand the Escambia to kind of more represent that, to really send that message.
This is our member from outside the state.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, this statement came from Mr. Sachs. So, yep. Well, again, there's no real action required tonight. I would ask you just to continue to think about this. Does this really fit where you want to go? And maybe even incorporated what was just stated here. But, you know, just, again, live with this a little bit, and let's see how it fits what we're trying to do.
Ted, I want to personally thank Ms. Appleyard for bringing you in. That was the most beneficial morning, and so, I mean, it was excellent. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
thank you,
Commissioner.
Carolyn, for
Appreciate
getting
it.
Ted. I mean,
Thank you.
I know we can't afford you, so
I was gonna say,
we appreciate
the price
your
was right, too.
Yeah, your pro bono is great.
Right. So the next piece that we were talking about was the draft core values. And so we sent out a number of choices that came out of our session at Woodland Heights. The unanimous response was integrity. You all felt like that was a core value that you all wanted to make sure that it was an integral part of the work that we're doing. Accountable, which I would think in this context you might want to stretch to accountability, was the second one, that 5 out of the 7 of you that responded had accountability as one of the ones that you felt like should be there. And then compassion. So those were the 3 that had that had a majority of those that responded felt like those should be on our list. Solution focused and dedication were 2 more that didn't quite meet the threshold there. Personally, I think in 3 to 5 is where you want to be. And there's certainly, again, integrity, accountability, and compassion should be part of this. Again, it's not only the standards that you're holding for yourself, but it's the standards that you're holding for those that you're going to be partnering with to get this work done. So let me give you some questions to think about, and I'll send all 5 of these out to you again for you to think about with these questions. So you guys are a startup. If you were going to be involved in another startup in a completely different field, would integrity, accountability, and compassion be something that you felt should be a part of those values of that startup? If you truly held to these standards and it resulted in you being at a disadvantage in some way, would that be acceptable to you? Is that how strongly you feel about integrity, accountability, and compassion, that you'd be willing to be put at a disadvantage to uphold those values? And then do these apply in the other pursuits that you're engaged in? When you think about the work that you do outside of this council, integrity, accountability, and compassion, do those fit with the way you operate? Any thoughts, questions, comments on the draft core values?
I don't think organizations talk enough about compassion. So I'm so excited that made the top 3. Integrity and accountability get a lot of discussion from a lot of organizations, but compassion just brings a whole new angle to not only government service, but service to others. And I think if we lived our lives more compassionately, we'd all be better people. So I'm real excited that made that top 3.
Yep. Yeah, I think it's outstanding. I was glad to see it there too. Okay. So I'll send those out to you along with those questions for you to consider. Maybe I'll come back at the October meeting. We can talk some more about it. Finally, we had the vivid description. And you have the work that the judge passed out to you. So do you want to talk about what you've done here?
I could not rewrite the article incorporating what was important to all 7 of us. And quite frankly, I don't think that I had 7 articles, although, of course, they're sitting at my desk. I meant to bring them tonight to keep with our records custodian, but I will bring our notes so that they can be made part of the record. But I did go ahead and everyone had 3 or so in their article that was important to them, and some are, specific programs, and then some are, goals or ideas or issues that it was important that each of us addressed. I will say, by far and away, the number 1 priority for the individuals that participated was kindergarten readiness. I think there was 5 out of the 7, or maybe even 6 out of the 7 mentioned kindergarten readiness. And I tried to break it down, but as you can see, and then again, for the public, a copy of this will be part of our minutes, but there were a lot of overlapping areas, whether it be education or whether it be family-focused, or specifically about newborns and babies. Infant mortality rates was another one where there was a lot of discussion about that. And then community programs and juvenile justice. Obviously, a lot of those issues overlap, at least from where I sit. They overlap. So certainly we'll look forward to a lot of collaborative programs and programs that are going to be offering elements of both education and family-oriented, as well as mentoring for our youth. So, but for the public, kindergarten readiness, expansion of daycare, childcare, aftercare programs, mentorship programs, infant mortality rates, and reduction of youth arrests were the top priorities of the group. But that's a lot, so.
Yeah. What I'd like to do is try to take the work, take this work, as well as some of the work that you did, and really sort of see if we can shape it into something that's, because one of the wonderful aspects of our time together last time was you got a real sense of the emotion of the vision that you all were seeing for what this council could do. And I think we want to make sure that we capture some of that in this vivid description. So what we're going to come out of this with is really this vision statement that reflects some of what Dr. Northrup was talking about earlier, that really helps flesh out when we talk about working together to make our children's lives better. What does that really mean? And the vision statement is meant to sort of reflect, put some sort of meat on the bones of what that really means to us. And so that'll be the next task that we'll work on, and try to have something back to you all at our next meeting.
Okay, and so what do you need from me?
If you would get the information back to Carolyn, what you've got, and then I'll reach out to you between now and then, and maybe bounce some ideas off of you and see if we're on the same page here.
Because admittingly, I thought that the exercise, I wrote down combined vivid description exercise, but I guess I really thought the goal was to try and figure out what our priorities were going to be first. And I don't know if necessarily that's the same as a vision statement overall. So, we can get together about it.
It's a kind of a blend of the two, really, is what we're looking for. So, yeah, we're good. Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of what I was going to ask, is because I'm not going to say I'm used to timelines, but when is it that we're going to decide? Because we can't do all of this in the first year.
Right.
So what is this group's intention of where are we going to start? As you said, kindergarten readiness was on a lot of, do we start there? When we get our funds, do we say we're accepting proposals that do that? But when is this group going to make that decision?
Well, and I think that was some of the discussion we had last time, are you going to have a single focus, particularly in this first year? Is it going to be 2 or 3 things maybe that you do, a limited number of things that you focus on in the first year? How important are pilot projects? How important is capacity building with what you're doing? Those are the kinds of issues that you're going to have to settle on pretty soon. But hopefully this vision piece will help you begin to make some decisions about that approach. But yeah, those are the key decisions that are going to be coming up pretty soon, I would imagine.
And so that brings to mind, are we scheduling another workshop then to do that? Because I know we kind of talked about another workshop, but I think it was a good starting point too, but I agree, we're going to have these hard conversations at some point.
are you available and willing to give us more of your time pro bono, Mr. Kircher? I'm sorry. Man, we couldn't pay you right now anyways.
That goes back to getting that bank aligned and stuff.
Yeah, let me answer the bank question first, and then I'll answer your, no, I'm happy to continue to work with you. Your work's very-
What you've done is amazing. I mean, I was shocked when I left that meeting, so.
Yeah.
If I can also add, I want to thank you for leading us through this very helpful day. And I think what's just surfaced here is the reality is there are going to be many potential initiatives. And I think we have to look at how wide do we go? How deep do we go? Where's that balance? And I'm thankful for this process because it helps my thinking on where are when we really wrestle with this, what are the priorities? And I think that will help us decide. Great question about, where are timelines? How fast do we go? Because that really speaks to that depth and that breadth
Right.
of how far we do stretch out, how deep do we go? So this to me is really a extremely helpful and I think necessary process for us to go through.
So maybe you can give Miss Appleyard some dates of
Sure.
where you're available again. I
Sure.
think the 3 hours was a good, 8 to 11 was
Okay.
good for everyone's
Can do.
schedule. I don't want to speak for myself, but, okay. So
But-
we'll be looking for dates, and that's when we can schedule our next meeting, hopefully in the October timeframe, maybe? So we can get.
It was particularly helpful to have everybody there, so I think
Yes.
there are a couple of schedules that are harder to jive with, but
Yes.
we're going to work
with
really
the
hard at
judge and
that.
with the Dr. Smith and Mr. Sachs, and then we'll,
Work with the judge.
yeah, and then we'll all work together.
We'll start with
I'll
those.
try not to be birthing a baby next
That's
time.
right.
Madam Chair, I do, Ted, I mean, and Carolyn, I want to thank you both. It was most beneficial, Carolyn. I mean, thank you for that leadership, and Ted, thank you for doing
Absolutely.
it. And
My pleasure.
I agree with Dr. Smith and Patty, how wide, how deep, and what are those initial wins that we try to get. So Patty, I certainly agree with you, and Ted, I appreciate it. It helped me, not just on this board, but in the other work that we do.
Good, thanks.
Thank you. Thank you
welcome.
so much.
You're welcome.
All right, at this time, we'll open up for public comment. Do we have any forms that have been submitted? Seeing no public comment?
Madam
Yes,
Chair?
sir. Yes, sir.
And I'm actually leaving out because it started at 6, and I do see a lot of advocates, but one of the biggest advocates for children in this community was a guy by the name of James Griffin. I'm getting ready to go to his funeral at St. John Divine. So I did want to acknowledge James Griffin and the work that he did with children, and particularly in the urban core. So I wanted to recognize him tonight.
Yes, thank you for telling us about him. Is he have an obituary in the paper that we could read?
Yep, James.
Okay,
Yep,
we'll
it's in the
look it
paper.
up.
James Griffin.
Okay.
And it's at St. John Divine Baptist Church.
Thank you so much for telling us that. All right, well, we will adjourn for tonight. Is there a motion to adjourn? Second?
Second.
All right, we will see you all Monday at September 20th at 5:01. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you. But there's no.